Stephen Kwan had a weird season in 2024. He had an injury that left him out for much of May and then another that sidelined him for a few weeks in September. Despite that, when he was healthy, he was incredible, blending his great ability to make contact almost at will with his short 6.4-foot swing, but still adding a measure of power that hadn't been seen from him in his first two seasons at the highest level of baseball. His high-caliber first half was enough to earn him his first ever All-Star game. As I've alluded to, Stephen Kwan was the best hitter in the league in those first few months. He was batting .350 through 28 games in March and April, and when he got injured in May, he was batting .390, very close to the legendary numbers put up by Ted Williams, one of the greatest players in MLB history. Now, it was obvious that Stephen Kwan wasn't going to continue putting up the numbers that haven't been seen since the mid-1900s, but the amount of aggression he had was more than expected. Stephen Kwan was just as bad a hitter as it gets after the All-Star break. Here's a table of Stephen Kwan's batting average throughout the year. As you can see, the numbers were great in the first half, but bad in the second half, and even the 12 games at the end of July, after the All-Star break, showed immediate regression, but he reached a career low, batting .195 in 12 games in September, shortly before an injury took him out for a few weeks. He made a return in a few games before the playoffs started, which despite Kwan's tough second half, the Guardians ended up winning the AL Central and making. But then, as if by magic, Stephen Kwan was back. He hit .524 in the ALDS and was a major part of the Guardians beating the Tigers, and moving on into their first ALCS Cleveland had played in since they went to the World Series in 2016. The Guardians would lose the ALCS to the Yankees in 5 games, but Stephen Kwan had turned around his second half performance and batted a great .381 in 10 playoff games. Because this is a physics project and not just a rundown of batting averages, the official scientific question is, how much did the physics of Stephen Kwan's swing affect his output pre- and post-All-Star game, and then why was he so good in the playoffs? Physics is ingrained in every process that we do, and that is all too true for baseball swings and hitting a baseball. So what specific measurements can we use to judge Stephen Kwan's swings and results of said swing to answer our question? Well, there are a few. Firstly, we can use his average exit velocity, which is the speed of the ball as it leaves the bat. This, of course, pertains to physics and baseball, because the harder you hit the ball, the higher chance something good happens. It's kind of self-explanatory. We can also use launch angle, which is the angle at which the ball leaves the bat, and the sweet spot for that is between 25 and 35 degrees for home runs. But it is best if it is above zero, because that means the ball is more of a line drive, which is the best way to get hits. Instead of a high or low launch angle, which gives you a pop-up or a grounder respectively, but that isn't enough. What else can be used as physics aspects of Stephen Kwan's swing? Swing length and swing speed can also be used, and because there were no split metrics that could be used to find the change in these, we are going to have to use his full season average, starting with Kwan's swing length, which is 6.4 feet. This is among the lowest swing lengths of any major league hitter, but it is great for a guy like Kwan because it allows him to make contact more than anyone else in the league. In fact, his squared up rate, which is hitting the ball on the sweet spot of the bat, which is better for hits, was 38.8% of swings, the best in the league. However, he had among the lowest swing speeds at just 64.4 miles per hour, which is bottom 1%, with the average being 71.5 miles per hour. So he makes good contact but doesn't hit it very hard. Now that we can use these statistics as a baseline, how did Kwan's average velocity and launch angle compare across the months? Starting with the average exit velocity of batted balls, there's a very slight trend downwards throughout the season, with his highest being in 4 games in March, but the more reasonable highest being 88.3 in June. After the All-Star break, his velocity does go down slightly, but it drops to its lowest in the playoffs, which was a resounding success for him. Even so, from this graph, it isn't that much of a difference and shouldn't be the reason that he was so bad in the second half, especially with the postseason he had, which had a lower average velocity than in his bad months. What about his launch angle? Well, Stephen Kwan was actually above the league average of 13.3 degrees throughout most of the season, minus only a couple of months. Now, this graph does show that once again there's a slight dip in his bad months of the year, and it does actually go back up in the playoffs. But as I said earlier, line drives are above 0 degrees and are best for hits, and with his swing length, he should be getting hits. And sitting around 14.9 degrees, which is his regular season average, is great for low velocity hits like singles. So it doesn't seem like average velocity of batted balls and his launch angle changed in any meaningful way. Even Stephen Kwan's chase rate, pitches he swings at, stayed relatively the same across the whole season and playoffs at 19.2%. Good for 10th best in the league and 96th percentile. So what is to blame for his bad second half? It is most often the best policy to not change anything in your swing, even when in a slump, because that's the same swing that got you in the league in the first place. It would be a bad idea to change something and get worse, as that is how you get cut from a team. But there must have been something, even if it wasn't the physics of his swing, that is the cause of this second half slump. It could have been the injuries that had been nagging him for some of the season, but because I wanted an answer, I looked further into the different statistics of monthly splits of Stephen Kwan to find a reason for this slump. And after some time, I found a few good explanations. Firstly, Stephen Kwan's strikeout rate had a correlation with the bad months. In this graph, you can see that Stephen Kwan's worst 2 months, where he batted just 207 and 195, had his highest strikeout rate, much higher than his normal strikeout rate from the season of a great 9.4%. So his strikeout rate was nearly 2 times larger than normal for him, but he also got a bit unlucky. In baseball, there is an interesting stat, BABIP, which is batting average on balls in play. And as seen from this table, his first half was very high and quite lucky. 368 twice and 500 are video game numbers. His BABIP was 364 in the first half total, and as I've said, a regression to the mean would happen. In the second half, he got as unlucky as he did lucky in the first half. He batted just 214 on balls in play, which is extremely unlucky. Since I could hardly say that Kwan just got unlucky and then turned this assignment in, I kept searching for a better explanation as to why he batted 214 on balls in play, and I think I found it. Firstly, his line drive percentage, which has already been said is very important for hits, dropped from 25.5% of the time to 22.4% of the time in the second half. More alarmingly for Kwan, his fly ball percentage went up nearly 10% from 36.3% in the first half to 44.1% in the second half. Fly balls, especially with a low swing speed like Kwan, is in out nearly every time unless you hit a lot of home runs, which Kwan doesn't do too much of, even with a more powerful year from him. Pair the second half stats from the fly ball rate and strikeout rate and you get 62%. So Kwan either hit the ball in the air or struck out nearly 2/3 of the time, and with that you get a recipe for a bad second half. Of course, even with a good explanation, there are a lot of factors that went into Kwan's hitting season. Injuries, fatigue, and underlying stats are all to blame for a poor second half. Despite all that, he batted .291 for the whole season, a very respectable number, and led the Guardians in the leadoff spot for the whole season. He scored 84 times, good for 39th in the league, and almost everyone in front of him was a power hitter. He also won his third Gold Glove in left field, an award he has won in every season he's played. So despite a tough second half hitting, Stephen Kwan still led a fun Cleveland Guardians team to the ALCS, played stellar defense, and had a great season all told.